Now in the Angular code, in inventory.component.ts, where we are submitting the request, we have to post the data to the .NET Core Web API. For that, what we'll do is just import HTTP client, and we can have an HTTP client injection in this class. Now this we'll be using to post the data. For that, what are the requirements to post the data? We want to do it on the submission, correct? So here on submit function, in this we'll use this HTTP client, post the data, and we have to pass the URL. So we'll have to define the URL over here as well. It's going to be the API URL. Let me just define it in the function itself for now. And we'll give it the value that we'll be taking from, and paste it in Visual Studio Code. Okay, so we have given the value. Now, yeah, it's going to be let API URL. Then we have to mention the body, correct? So for the body, we have to pass the inventory data. So after passing the body of the request, this is not mandatory, but we can give the HTTP options as well. So if you have some specific header values, you can include it here. Okay, let me just define the HTTP options. Close this. Let HTTP options. So let me give the headers here, and it's going to be new HTTP headers, and then we can give the content type as well. Value could be application / JSON, because this is what we are going to pass. I'll save it. And over here, what we are going to do is, once we have the post method ready, we have to subscribe to it. This is how it works. We're going to subscribe to this post method because this is not going to execute simultaneously as we are hitting on submit function. We don't want to wait for it to execute. This is an async call that we are making. And in the subscribe, we'll give the actions that we want to perform. What should happen if there is an error? The main task is to define what should happen once it is completed. So once it is completed, we want to give the function here, and this alert should only happen once the post request is completed. So we'll move it here. Now we have defined the post call in our Angular code. Let me just save it. And we have to make a change in the app.config as well. Over here, we have to provide HTTP client. This function we are defining in the providers and saving. So what I'm going to do is just put a debugger over here, okay, to check if the call is being made to the backend API or not, what request is coming. But before that, there is one more change that we'll have to make. If you focus over here on the URL, you will see that this is localhost colon 7019 is the port that we are using, and in the Angular application that is running, it is 4200. So we'll have to make changes for this .NET Core Web API to handle the CORS request. Now for that, I'll just stop the execution once and open the program.cs file to make the change. As we see over here, we already have some methods being called for the application, so we also have to make the changes for different servers requests that are being passed to this web API. So I'll begin making the changes. Define a variable and give it a value underscore, same name I'm taking over here for the text value, and then we have the builder, right? Various functions of services are getting called, and over here only we'll have to call the add course function also. So I'll make the changes for that. Options dot add policy, give the name that will be the variable that we have just created, and then for the builder we have builder with origins. Okay, so over here we are going to give the URL of the local host that we have. So I'll give the local host 4200 we had. Okay, just switching on my numlock, and then we can have, I think, one without the server name also. This way we have defined we want to allow any header, we want to allow any method, and set is origin allowed some domains. So after this, one more thing we have to do before authorization, we have to call another function, that is use course, and over here also we'll be passing the variable that we have created. Now I'll just save this. Over here we had a syntax error. After this, what we'll do is we'll run the application. Okay, but one more thing, as of now we don't want to return any message from here. We are just returning the OK status. So I'll run the solution now. Why I have removed the message, I'll be picking it up later in the lecture, that we will be sending a JSON rather than a string value from here. So that is one thing that I'll be explaining to you. But as of now, let's just try to save the inventory details. I'll go to the application once, go to the inventory page. Now I'm putting some random values. Okay, I will select mobiles from here. That is another product rather than earphones, because that is the one that we had already entered. Now I click on submit. What it should do is, exactly, it should come over here on the debugger, because now you see that we have made the connection from the front end to the .NET application, to the .NET Core Web API. And when we are clicking on submit on the Angular application, it is pointing to this debugger now. The flow is created, and now I click on continue. So you see, we have got the alert that this particular form has been submitted successfully. That means that once the post call is completed that we had subscribed to, the alert is showing this is what we were trying to do and it is successfully achieved. So I click on OK. How to confirm that our data is getting saved successfully? We'll need to go to the database, and over here I'll just execute it. Okay, so the select statement is executed and we see over here that the data is successfully saved. And over here for the product name, you see that we are passing the index from the drop down, so that is what is getting saved, but the row is successfully created from the application. So we are able to achieve the save flow from the Angular to the .NET Core Web API into the database. After this, what we are going to do is, we'll be getting the data from the database on our Angular application, because what you see over here in the table, this is some static data, correct? This is not the data that we have saved in the table. So we need to bring the data from the database to the application on the front end in Angular. So that is the get flow. That is what we are going to achieve now.